with PC EXPO, it's just cool because there's so much educational content. There's so many opportunities in the network, and it was great. It was very educational for me. Like the 4 days I was there, I learned a ton. And then the trade show, just being able to network with people and interact.
Welcome to the Painter Growth Podcast, where we help you scale your painting company in record time. Join us as we explore sales, marketing, hiring, finances, leadership, and more, everything that you need to know to scale and grow your painting business. I hope you enjoy and subscribe.
What is up, everybody? Mike Hickman here, founder of paintergrowth.com, and you are listening to the Painter Growth Podcast. And we have an exciting episode today with my friend and head of partnerships at the Painting Contractors Association, otherwise known as the PCA. We got Sheen Mayberry, who is my direct contact with the PCA and any like industry partner deals with Sheen, and thought I'd invite him on to get a unique perspective of the PCA. So what's up, Sheen?
Not much, man. I appreciate you having me on your podcast. Yeah, really excited. It's you're catching us at a unique time at PCA where we just wrapped up our event season. We're heading into PCA EXPO next year, so it's a great time and really look forward to having a great discussion today. And thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. So you are currently head of partnerships with the PCA. How did you get involved with the PCA to begin with? What does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been with PCA about 15 months now, coming up on 15 months. So when I originally joined PCA, the role was called the Industry Partners Coordinator, because that's what they did. They worked with industry partners. None of my job responsibilities have changed, but I decided to request to change the title to Partnerships Manager recently, just because I thought that as I had begun working on partnerships with PCA, I'd applied sort of my own flavor to it. And I figured that the title of Partnerships Manager was a little bit more appropriate. So I originally started as Industry Partner Coordinator, now Partnerships Manager, but it's the same thing. But yeah, to go back to your original question, I've been with PCA for 15 months. Originally, I started out working in the American political campaign world. I was in Republican politics. I started out as an intern in college. After a couple of years doing some part-time political work, I got my first full-time political job. And then I had a pretty fun time, I spent about 6 to 7 years. I lived in several states in the U.S. working on campaigns and doing a myriad of other things. But the political world it's seasonal, it's cyclical, and there's no job stability to it, right? And you're also always traveling, which is just not conducive to being able to settle down. So, it was perfect for me in my 20s, but about 3 or 4 years ago, I left the political world, but it gave me some really good skills and experiences to enter into partnerships and nonprofits. And I also worked at a nonprofit for a year as well, doing fundraising, which is very synonymous with what I do now at PCA. So did that for 7 years. Simultaneously while doing that, I spent 6 years in the U.S. Army Reserve, or in Florida Army National Guard, kind of a even split between the two. I got out for 4 years, and then after 4 years, I was campaign manager for a Navy Reserve officer that was running for office. And he was like, look, man, he's like, if you kind of miss being in the military, you should join the Navy Reserve, which I did 4 years ago. I actually ended up becoming a CB, which CBs, we do construction. So I did a deployment to the Middle East, Jordan, Bahrain, where I was doing, construction, carpentry, things like that. And so that kind of gave me an exposure to the trades as well. I am by far not as skilled as a professional civilian contractor. I know the basic stuff, like if I want to build some furniture or maybe do something in my house. But it was a cool experience. I ended up kind of having an appreciation for the trades. I worked with a lot of guys that on the outside, they are tradesmen and they're hard workers. And so coming into PCA, so when I was wrapping up my deployment last year, I actually interviewed for my Connex box to get the job with our executive director. And I was like 3 weeks before leaving the Middle East to come back to the US. And then I was in Germany when I got the job offer, which was pretty cool because I was coming home and then I got a job offer as I'm doing my decompression layover or whatever in Germany. And then got back to St. Louis and started at PCA where, I started working the job and honestly, it's been probably the most fun I've had for a civilian job that I've ever had. So that's
Yeah.
sort of in summary where I've managed to be a PCA.
Yeah, I'm sure you would have done some more exciting things in the Navy than working in an office job. But so you basically applied for the PCA just from like a cold job posting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So Nigel, our exec director, I think it was Indeed.
Yep.
They were trying to fill the role. They were trying to fill a couple of roles simultaneously. So our previous marketing manager and myself got hired around the same time. So when we started, it was kind of like with a clean slate of where, because I work a lot with, there's a couple of departments I work very closely with in PCA. So was able to sort of develop some initiatives with marketing along the same time. But yeah, I started, at first it was a lot to deal with when I first started. I was sort of like, it was my first time working with corporate companies at this level, which it's a very high level, you begin to realize. And then I remember about 3 weeks in, I started having some success, because at first I'll be honest, I was so scared when I started because I was just like, this seems like a lot to fill. I'm just coming back from having been on active duty for a year. And at the same time, I'm trying to reacclimate to civilian, civilian society, because, the way you conduct yourself in the military is fundamentally different from the civilian world. So, but yeah, started having some success and getting used to the role. And by about 2 months in, I started noticing I was developing recipes for success that worked for me. And it's been nothing but uphill since then.
That's awesome. And that's really cool. That's quite the meandering path to get to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember one of the first partners I brought on, actually a mutual contact of ours, Eric Vasnak, working with him and bringing him on board as a partner. That was one of the first partners that I brought on that I learned a lot about the process and sort of like learning about what various partners do, how they interact with each other. But I remember he was one of the first partners I brought on. And then after that, I started moving into the EXPO season and learning about that. When it comes to EXPO, for example, I remember that was a whole another thing to unravel, because with our EXPO, I manage the trade show. So, I'm the guy that sends out all those emails like, hey, here are our booths. Come get your booth, and sort of facilitating that.
So what types of, and I want to get more into what you're doing now and how, the average painter can maximize their, the resources that the PCA has. But what type of lessons did you gain from either your time in politics or time in the Army that you were able to now apply to your position and your role as a partnership manager at PCA?
A lot. So starting from the political side, right? It's really the art of negotiation. The art of negotiation, and my approach to politics, to partnerships, is going to be a little different from some people. Because I think everybody. One of the things I've realized in my role at PCA is that you need a foundation of skills to be successful at a role, but you can also develop your own flavor to the position as well. So when I look at my time in politics, I learned a lot about just honestly just talking to people, and not in any particular setting, but just being able to talk to people, have discussions with people. That's the big skill I learned from politics, was that whether I am talking to a voter or I'm talking to a fellow staff member or to a candidate, right? You learn how to talk to people at various levels. I remember having a conversation with, at the time, the Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell in Kentucky. So at that point, you're having a conversation with the Senate Majority Leader, right? The next day, I might be talking to a volunteer at a county party function, right? So you learn really quickly how to talk to different people and have different types of conversations. And I took that experience and applied it to my role and found out that it worked pretty well. Mm-hmm. And then my boss, he gave me a book to read, and it was sort of like, if you want to be even more successful in this role, ask people questions, right? What are people's goals, right? Instead of assuming, and that was a mistake I made early on with PCA, was that I had these partner packages, these different deliverables you could take part of, and I would present it to people and say, hey, this is what you need, right? And I quickly learned, I was like, hey, why don't I just ask them what their goals are, what they would like to see out of a partnership with PCA? And I sort of developed that on the spot. And as far as a military experience, what I brought from the military was just tenacity and grit, right? Because as you know, you're a business owner. Partnerships can be pretty stressful. You're essentially talking to a lot of different people about a lot of different things, all types of people. And so just being able to be consistent, just know that, hey, some days are going to be bad. Some days are going to be great. But just being able to have that tenacity, that grit, and that mindset of consistency every day, no matter what it is. And then I would say finally, too, just what I've appreciated about being in this role is that I've been able to accomplish things that I never thought I would be prior to joining PCA, and that in part is just being able to plug into a team that we have, collaborate with them, and then stand up projects or get things done. It's been really, I've learned a lot about myself during my time at PCA, and I've learned a lot about other people. So if that answers your question.
Yeah, I mean, those are some pretty solid lessons because, a partnership manager, it is a sales role, right? There's a lot of logistics, I'm sure, but bringing on new partners is for sure sales activity. And politics is also sales, right?
Yep. At the end of the day, it's all about talking to people.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So when you got brought on to the PCA, what was the goal of your position? And how has that changed in the last year and a half?
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, it's sort of like the response to that is it's almost chronological in nature, right? So, so when I first came on, my predecessors in the role, they'd had a difficult time just being able to deliver for people. Whatever their experiences were, I don't know. All I know is from my own experience. But initially, the role was industry partners coordinator, and it was to maintain current industry partners, gain and prospect new industry partners, and also project manage deliverables for those various partners, right? And and now I've developed it into like 4 or 5 things. So that was a good framework for me to enter into. I entered into the role kind of doing those things. And then as I have grown into the role, I've sort of developed it into gaining new partnerships, maintaining current partnerships, growing current partnerships, right? Outside of the standard model that we have, right? Because you know how it is when you came on as an industry partner, I sent you a package and it was like, hey, for this level, you get this, right? What I've tried to do with the role is say that, for example, if we need educational content for PCA members, let's do a webinar with these industry experts, and it's going to be outside of their standard deliverables, right? So they have the experience of being able to provide content and education for PCA members. However, this is outside, and it also provides them an opportunity to grow within the PCA as partners and be able to contribute more, in which something I'm very appreciative of, because we have a lot of partners that they contribute so much of their own time and effort to provide resources to members, and it's it's always a good feeling inside. Another thing I tried to do was develop friendships with a lot of partners. There's a lot of partners that we have where we've been able to grow some pretty solid friendships that I think will continue beyond my tenure at PCA. But yeah, that's been sort of like how I've evolved the role, and also looking at what kind of partnerships can we develop that is not necessarily a manufacturer or a marketing company or somebody that provides a product or service. For example, we're currently trying to work with Goodwill International to set up the painter training program with them, to where they can send some of their, I forget what they call them, I believe clients, and that way they can access painter training for free, and it provides more painting manpower, so to say, for the painting industry. So that's sort of been my experience, but it's been a lot of ups and downs, but mostly very positive stuff.
That's awesome. And I guess continuing that question, where do you see the partnership program at the PCA going over the next couple of years?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, you're catching us at a really exciting time. going back to last year's expo, that was my first expo with PCA. I remember we ran out of booths very quickly. So like a month before expo, I had non-partner companies reaching out that wanted to exhibit. And unfortunately, we didn't have booths because we just sold out, right? And we had record attendance at last year's expo. Moving into next year's expo, end of February, early March, we think it's going to be an even larger expo. And as you see, I've been sending out tons of emails about the trade show, and I'm down to like my last few booths. It's pretty crazy. And this is like 3 months before expo. But what that's indicative of is just where PCA is heading overall. And if I speak about from a partnerships perspective, right? I believe that partnerships with PCA is probably going to grow tremendously next year, because just the excitement of expo, it's I think the word's getting out there organically, because I get so many inquiries from companies that are non-partners that want to exhibit. And it's really exciting. You know, it's cool to look at something that we're a staff of about 7 or 8, and everybody at PCA is hardworking, in addition to board and volunteers and everyone that puts in time and effort. And overall, just PCA is growing. And I think as a byproduct of that is membership grows, partnerships grow, right? So honestly, to answer your question, I just see it heading in a direction of upward growth, and it'll be pretty exciting.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen the PCA in a lot more places, and you guys have awesome leadership. With people like Nick and Brad, you have just industry titans being super involved with the PCA, which is obviously very helpful to have people like that. You have someone like Nick as the mouthpiece for the PCA. Couldn't ask for anyone better, in my opinion, at this juncture in time.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So when as we let's keep talking about the expo for a little bit. So I was one of the guys that got turned down last year for a booth. I was late to the party. I asked for a booth, and you guys were sold out. But this year I got in on day one, so I got a sweet booth. I'm really excited about. What can people expect with the PCA, or with the expo rather? Like it's a big trade show, but for a painting contractor who's like thinking about attending it, maybe thinking about membership with the PCA as well, like why would someone travel across the country to attend the expo?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a really good question. So coming from my experience, PCA Expo last year, going to Expo was how I put a face to the name, so to say, right? And with PCA Expo, it's just cool because there's so much educational content. There's so many opportunities in the network, and it was great. It was very educational for me. Like the 4 days I was there, I learned a ton. And then the trade show, just being able to network with people, interact. This upcoming Expo, it'll be February 26th to March 1st in Orlando, Florida, which I think the timing is great because the majority of people that attend are coming from places where it's cold, it's snowing. And so Florida, I'm from Florida originally. Florida that time of year is, pretty warm, as it is almost all the time. I'm here now and it's like 85 degrees. So it's going to be a nice break for people. It's going to be sort of like closing out the end of winter. People can come to Expo and warm up and have a good time. But there's going to be a lot of educational presentations, panels, speakers. We recently sent out our emails to people that had been selected as speakers as well. So we'll have that. We'll have the events and receptions every night. So every night, the manufacturer, Sherwin-Williams, Benjamin Moore, PPG, Behr, they all have their own separately themed events where people can go and have a good time and eat some food and drink some, have some drinks. So I think a lot of people like doing that and having some fun. Then we'll have the trade show as well. We'll have the trade show where I think currently right now I'm at over about 74 booths have been sold so far. So That's about 60 vendors. And I think once it's all said and done, we'll have about 70 vendors at the trade show, but currently in development of that. But yeah, it's going to be a great time. A lot of education, a lot of networking, and I think it's going to be even bigger than last year if the data and the patterns hold true.
How many attendees do you anticipate showing up this year?
I would say definitely probably over 900. Wow. Last year's Expo, we had about 700. close to. I would say this year, if what I'm reading on my end from just partnerships, because I don't handle the expo registration, but conversation I've had with people, I would say probably 900, and then I wouldn't be surprised if the final total came out to 1,000, especially with how much we added capacity we have with the trade show and things like that.
Wow, that's super exciting. So, in terms of like the education and the panels, what types of topics are going to get covered?
Yeah, that's great. A lot. So, obviously we live in a day and age where AI is on the rise, or automated machine learning, whatever you call it. We're going to have educational panels that cover pretty much everything. When you're a painting contractor, right? You have your marketing, you have your hiring, you have all these different things that go into it aside from just painting. So we will have panels on automation. We'll have panels on hiring, panels on marketing, right? Marketing is a huge one, I've noticed. And that's the cool thing about my role is I get to work with all of these different marketing companies. Marketing panels on pretty much anything related to admin, operations, anything to running a contracting business. So there'll be panels there. There'll be a wide array of speakers as well, experts on various things. So we'll have that as well. We're also going to be there'll be breakout sessions. So there'll be certain people we identify that, the education committee is like, hey, this guy would be, or this person would be a great speaker on this topic. We'll do that. We're also going to be adding something very new to Expo this year. This is a project that Dave Graham, our vice chair, and myself have been working on, but there are many painting contractors that also double as flooring contractors. I didn't know this, but we're currently working with 4 flooring companies to do some educational sessions about flooring, because as PCA, we're trying to grow PCA to be an even larger tent organization. So you'll see some presentation, some content regarding flooring as well. So that's going to be pretty exciting.
Do you mean like carpets and hardwood, or like garage epoxy?
I'm not an expert in flooring, but I'll have to get back to you on that. I just know in general, just flooring, like Husqvarna, PVG flooring, things like that. So I'm not a huge expert in flooring, so I couldn't really tell you.
That's probably be more like coatings, like garage floor coatings and stuff.
That's it. Yeah, that is what it is.
Yeah. It was just like when I was talking the other day to Ryan of Ryan Davis. He's got he has his own floor coating company, and they do like just exclusively epoxy flooring, and he's in the painting business now. So I think there's a lot of people who wanting to get an epoxy flooring because it's a good industry, it's a growing industry, and there's a lot of good margin in it.
Yeah, I think this company's Cardinal Coatings or something like that. I was actually talking to him. He's a very engaged partner and probably one of my favorite people to work with. So we're talking a couple of weeks ago.
Cool. So the expo, it's set to be big. I'm going to be there. I got a big old double booth. And actually just got the email. I'm going to be on a panel, which is exciting. Perfect. So first expo, I'm going to get to be on a panel. Hopefully you can provide some more value. And so the expo is huge. Obviously 900 attendees. And you said you just got through event season. I've seen a lot of emails about these other events, but just would love to hear kind of your perspective on them. What are the other events that the PCA puts on around the year?
Yeah, absolutely. That was actually one of the 3 items that I was going to bring up today on the podcast was, so we just finished our event season, and PCA event season usually begins in the fall. So we had a Spanish workshop in Orlando, Florida, where outreach to Spanish-speaking Hispanic contractors is a pretty big priority for PCA at the moment. So we had that in Florida with a lot of different speakers. Brandon Pierpont was one, Solomon and Ashley Velasquez as well. And they were very instrumental in setting that event up. And so the Hispanic painting event geared towards that demographic.
Okay.
Then I was actually there for one day. We had the commercial forum and women in paint. Those are 2 events as well. You've probably seen the theme women in paint a lot, and that's because it's really grown, right? So obviously first one, Spanish speaking contractors, women in paint as well. And the title is self-evident, reaching women in paint. We had those at Nashville at the Gaylord Opry, which that is a really nice hotel, I have to say. I remember I showed up and I was like, whoa. But I was actually driving, because So I'm doing a workup for deployment. I'll be leaving PCA early next year, actually, but I decided to stop by Nashville for one night just to check it out. But we had both those events side by side at the Gaylord Opry. I believe it like close to 200 attendees, and everything I heard was positive and had a very good energy. So commercial, women in paint. Then we just wrapped up Contractor Reboot as well in Seattle, and that was a lot of the effort and leadership from that came from Cole Palea out there at Nova Painting. He's a great guy to work with. Moving into 2024, we'll be repeating those same events as well, but we'll also be looking to expand the Spanish-speaking contractor workshops. We'll be looking to do one-day workshops in select states, New Jersey, Texas, California. Because if you look at like Southern California, the majority of contractors are Spanish-speaking. So those are sort of our events in a nutshell, but we're basically looking at key demographics and saying, what kind of events can we hold to bring value and connect these people with each other. But yeah, the Nashville events, I was there in person, and honestly, it was great. A lot of great people, and probably the amount of fun I had there, and just the amount of people I was able to talk and network to, it was comparable to Expo for me. It was such a good time.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've seen those events. Like the emails for them, I didn't really know much about them other than just the titles from. I don't know how long you guys have been doing them or how big they are. What can someone expect? Like, what was this one that you said you had in Seattle? Contractor Reboot. What is that all about?
Yeah, so Contractor Reboot. We developed the concept earlier this year, or maybe late last year. But when we look at events, right? Let's say like commercial. Well, that's pretty self-evident on what it is. It's geared towards commercial contractors. Women in paint, same thing, right? The thought process behind Contractor Reboot was many times as a contractor, contractors will start to experience burnout. So, you're working 6-7 days a week and, all these things, and you start to see diminishing returns, right? So the concept behind Contractor Reboot was we brought in mental health experts. I believe somebody was there because I didn't attend, but I believe somebody there led some yoga sessions. But just all of these little things, these lifestyle habits, mindset tricks that you can do to sort of reboot yourself. Because the way we look at it was like, mental health is important to anyone, but especially contractors. You have all this stress. So how do you reboot yourself? How do you reset yourself so that way you're not burning out, and that way you can take a couple of days off and come back as a new person.
That's a cool idea.
Yeah.
Who led that one?
So Cole Palea, Nova Painting, he was very instrumental in that. He was actually our on the ground contact person. Nigel Costello, our executive director, obviously he was present. Let's see, some of the speakers as well. I remember Brandon Pierpont was a speaker, and a few other people that I wasn't familiar with. I know a mental health expert as well. And I believe obviously some of our board members were there. I wasn't as involved in that event outside of the sponsorships. But yeah, quite a lot of people. And there was a lot of people that donated their own time, energy, and effort to make it happen.
That sounds like a valuable event. Are you planning on doing more of those around the country?
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know, we don't have the location set as of yet for many of the events, but yeah, so early next year after Expo, we'll start transitioning towards that event cycle again, and then we'll be pushing that information. And the way I interact with those events is I manage all the partnership, the sponsorships for the events. So whenever you go to the event and you see like this event has been brought to you by XYZ, I'm generally behind the scenes trying to gain sponsors for the event, so that way partners can go and interact with the membership. So, and it's a lot of fun, trying to do sponsorships for events. It's really dynamic, and my side of it, I had to develop sponsorship packages and then work with the people involved in the event to make sure the deliverables were in line. So it was fun, but when the event season was over, I was like, "Whew, all right, mission accomplished there."
Yeah. For a while, I felt like I was getting an email every week or two with a different event. That's a lot of moving parts, a lot of logistics. Yeah,
it is, because it's funny. I have an email distress sent out all the partners, and it's like I remember in the summer, especially, I was just sending out email after email. And at some points I was like, man, I need to slow this down a little bit because I just feel so bad about just sending all these emails out about events.
Hey, you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah.
So I guess you said that in about a year from now, you're going to go, you have deployment coming up.
Yeah. So I got back from deployment last year. And I moved to a different unit, transferred to a different unit. They have a deployment coming up to Horn of Africa. So I volunteered for it. So I've been out of the office for about a month or two. I've been doing various schools leading up to the deployment. I was in San Diego for 2 weeks. So if you're a partner and you've been taking calls with me and you notice that my background keeps changing, that's why. But yeah, I will be leaving early next year to begin doing a workout for that deployment. So currently in transition, vetting candidates to take over my role for me. And then and I'll be gone for a year. But yeah, that actually transitions to our vision for partnerships. Was that hopefully somebody, whoever my successor is, I almost said predecessor, whoever my successor is, can continue the work that I've done and take the role and elevate it. You know, that would be my goal, because I take a lot of pride in our partnerships program. And what I always tell people is I think I've done a mediocre job, and I think there are people out there that can do an even better job. And I hope that's the case. But yeah, hopefully would like to take the role, elevate it, and grow it and continue. So that way, whenever if I ever look on Google and see where partnerships at, it's like, it's taken off. But yeah, I will be leaving early 2024. And there's a part of me that very sad, because I was in Nashville and I was saying goodbye to people, and, having people come up to you and they're like, man, we're going to miss you. And it brought some, feelings of sadness up, and I'm going to miss a lot of people, but, I'm also excited to go overseas and, burn up in the desert from the heat for a few months.
Yeah. I'm sure you'll have some crazy new experiences doing that. So would you ever, it sounds like it's a good experience. So after that deployment, like if there's an opportunity at the PCA, it sounds like you want to come back if you could.
I could, it's the funny thing about partnerships is, as you know, right? With the U.S. military system, like, there actually are protections for reservists, where whenever you go on deployment and you come back, that your job's still there, right? But what I told my team was, like, I was like, look, I could do that, but also when you look at partnerships, right? A lot of times partnerships, it's like 50 to 70% of it's the person, because you get to know people and you put your own SOPs in place and your own procedures and just how you do things. And so realistically, whoever takes over for me, let's say they get settled into the role for a year and they do incredibly well, it's just highly unrealistic for me to come back and say, all right, step out of the way, I'm taking back over, right? Nor would I want to do that. So yeah, if PCA ever had an opportunity for me, in the future, would definitely love to. It's been a great organization to work with. But I would also, for the success of partnerships, I hope that we find somebody that just takes it off and does twice as better as me. That's the real goal.
Yeah. It's your job now to kind of create the vision for what you think the role should be, and like working with people like Nigel and Nick and mapping out what that role should look like 3 to 5 years from now, and building that role and building that scorecard so that when you find that next person, they have like a clear succession path. Yeah,
I would say, maybe a slight percentage of that. What I did do, I volunteered with our team, I was like, look, let me write out an assessment of the program, right? What was the state of partnerships in PCA before, which it's always been in a very good spot. How did I change it? What things are occurring in the painting landscape, right, that we can adapt to? Because I will say this, like, with a lot of, I've learned so much from just working with partners, like what works for you, what works for me. So I wrote an assessment of partnerships program, my perception of it, and what I thought the vision of it going forward would look like. And then I'm sure they'll look at it from the board side, right? What's their vision for it? What is the executive staff's vision for it? And I'm sure it'll coalesce somewhere. So yeah, I definitely had some input in that. But I also kind of left it open-ended because I felt as if I want my successor to take what I've learned and I've been successful at, and also what I failed at, because I've failed at so many things, right? And I think it's important to fail, and turn it into something of their own. Because it is one of those roles where you own it. It's not something where you can just show up every day and kind of mail it in. Like, you have to be engaged. Like, a lot of it, so much of what I do is communication, just responding to people. That's probably 60 to 70% of it. So that would be my ideal vision, is that somebody comes in with a knowledge of what the program consists of, what success looks like, what failure looks like, and turn it into something of their own, to where they can continue growing partnerships.
Yeah. I mean, on that note, like, what is the thing that you feel like an initiative or project that you took on in your tenure here that didn't work out? Like, also, like, what do you think your biggest failure was as a partnership manager?
Yeah. So failures, it's not sort of like any one major event that was a big failure, right? But more just on the side of partnerships where trying to gain new partners, right? There have been certain potential partners where I was like, they're going to be coming on board at this level, and it's going to be a great addition to the team. And then it just never happened, and it sort of goes back to that sales aspect of like, and this probably from running your own business, like you have that potential client or customer and you're like, I've got them. And then they just don't respond to your emails. So I think learn from that, because at first I used to take it a little personally. I'm like, oh, is it me? And then, then you just get to the point of where it's like, well, if they don't respond, it's fine. I mean, I'm sure there's one or two other companies out there that would be happy to. So there's been that failure in that regard, yeah, I would say
that's any industry, right? And you kind of got to change that mindset. It's like a sale isn't a sale until the check is cashed.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, as far as success, it's always a good feeling. I remember when I brought on my first partner, I was just staring at the screen in disbelief. I was like, what? They just said, yeah, and then from there it was just uphill, and I remember it was so exciting every time I brought on a new partner. And then from there, it's been able to provide that platform for whenever we unveil the trade show. It's like, I know those booths, it creates so much excitement. And that's another aspect that I enjoy, is like the people get so excited. It's probably one of the first jobs I've had where people are legitimately excited, because the cool thing is I'm dealing primarily with business owners. So they're pouring their heart and effort into this, and they're very motivated, and it's cool to work with positive, inspirational people. Because I don't think I've ever really run into anybody negative in partnerships. It's always been people that are primarily positive.
Yeah. I mean, that's the painting industry is an awesome spot right now, and like you said, we caught shit a good time. PCA is growing, the painting industry is growing, it's professionalizing, and it's got full of an amazing group of people now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's exciting. I'll definitely miss it. But I've learned an incredible amount. I've made I would say probably some lifelong friendships and I'll always look back at my time in the painting industry as through very positive ones.
Yeah, absolutely. And I gotta say it. Do you think that you were hired because your name is Sheen, and that's like kind of ironic?
That is pretty funny. 'Cause I've had a couple people say that, because I remember a manufacturer, I forget which one, but they were talking about their Sheen product, or they sent me some deliverables, and I was like, man, this is kind of funny. Or the other funny thing is, like, I have such a unique name. I used to really dislike my name when I was younger. At this point, I'm almost 32, so it's like whatever. And I like that unique aspect. But people, I'll be on the phone, and people are like, "Did you say Sheen?" I'm like, "Yeah, Sheen, like Charlie Sheen or Martin Sheen." So I always try to throw in that little dose of comedy with it.
Yeah, or like the semi-gloss. That would resonate a bit quicker with painters than Charlie Sheen, I think.
Yeah.
Well, awesome, man. Well, it's great getting to know you a little bit more. I'm kind of saddened that you're going to be taken off from the PCA, since I've only been with the PCA for about a year now, and you've been my main contact. But I'm sure you're going to have a lot of, hopefully, a rewarding experience overseas, and hopefully you stay safe while you're there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on the podcast, man. This has been great, and hopefully some of your audience learned about PCA. And PCA, as far as I'll wrap it up with saying that PCA, we have a lot of resources for members. We have our events, we have our member resources, business training, painter training, just so many things available to becoming a PCA contractor. So if you're a painting contractor, definitely check us out. And if you're a company that provides products or services to contractors, and feel free to reach out and learn more how to become a partner and become part of this great ecosystem. But yeah, thanks for having me on today, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for being here. And I'll if you send me those links, I'll pop them in the description below the podcast, so anyone can just click on the partner link or the member link or the expo link. And hopefully, looking forward to meeting you in person in a couple of months. And hopefully anyone listening here decides to at least come to the expo and give it a shot and come hang out.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks, Sheen.
Thanks for listening to the Painter Growth Podcast. If you want to grow your painting business, go to www